Hey, welcome to this video where I'm going to talk about my favorite 5-star reads I've read so far this year. I have 6 5-star reads to reveal to you. What I'm going to do is draw them out and maybe you can guess what they are before I've finished drawing them. I'm just going to talk about the books as I go. Also, hey, I'm Steph. I'm the Average Artist. If you're new here, I do a lot of doodles, stories, illustrations, comics, all sorts of stuff, so give me a subscribe if you want to make me happy, I guess. Maybe you don't, that's fine. So the first book is a Japanese fantasy novel and it explores themes of trauma, friendship and healing. It stars I realised I just never said her name out loud. Kokoro, that's it, that's the name. Middle school girl, and she's dealing with a lot of like bullying and anxiety, so she just stops going to school one day. And she doesn't tell her parents why, and we don't really find out why until, as the story progresses. And I find it really interesting, that side of the story. But then also the fantasy side of the story is that she finds a mirror glowing in her room. And when she goes to touch it, she realizes she can go inside it and she's transported to a magical castle. And she's not alone there. There are other teenagers there, and as the story progresses, we find out their stories and we see her friendship develop with them as the days go on. And they're told they're only allowed to be in the castle until 5 p.m. If they go over that time, then they'll be eaten by wolves. And I found this really intriguing because it was very funny. This story was so soft and light, and then there'll be moments of the bullying or the wolves are going to eat you, and it's suddenly like, oh my gosh, this story is a bit harsh. But that's why I really liked it. I found it was a little bit predictable, but I liked the predictability of it. It felt like the writer was saying it to us and we knew what was going to happen to these characters, or we knew what was going on before the characters knew what was going on. And I found that quite clever. It's a sort of story where you'll either be surprised by it or you'll enjoy going along with it, with the author sort of having a wink nudge moment and waiting for these characters to realize what's happening to them. I just found it really comforting, and then also, like I said, moments of sharpness of you're gonna die now, or trauma that's happened within some of their lives, which was really interesting. And I think one of the issues with this book, even though I gave it 5 stars, is the translation. Obviously it's Japanese, so I always find with Japanese translations it's different because it's obviously written from a perspective of a person that has a different life to yours, so culturally it's very different. So sometimes things read as quite cold, or the characters are being cold, and I think that's just how formal some characters can be towards each other. So it's interesting to read it in that perspective. I think sometimes you have to give it that caveat, but it was so good. I really enjoyed it. I think it was one of those books that I couldn't put down. So this book is The Lonely Castle in the Mirror, and 5-star read. The next book is very different in theme and content, but it does involve a small group of teenagers. I guess they're teenagers or they're in the early 20s, studying at a college, and this, I guess you would call it, dark academia. And from the start you find out that this group of young people have murdered one of their own. One of their group, I guess I should say. And it follows the main character of Richard, who is a student from California, and he transfers to this elite liberal arts college. And he becomes engrossed in this idea of elitism and this small group of people who are studying Greek, and he has to be involved with them. He thinks they're beautiful, he thinks they're wonderful, and he wants to be part of their group, and he does everything in his power to become part of it. This story is just so engrossing. It's got characters that you just hate. You're against them, but it's that same sort of style of Breaking Bad where you want them to get caught, but you also don't. You want to see how the story develops. It's really strange. You know they're in the wrong and you dislike them thoroughly, but then you also want them to succeed. It's really strange. I couldn't put this book down. I read it in 2 days and it was just a page turner. I don't know, it tells you straight away what these kids have done from chapter 1, that they've murdered this person, and then it just carries on from there. It starts from the beginning of how they came to do this act, and then carries on afterwards of how they tried to get away with it, what they do, and it's just, I don't know, it's so strange. It's like a sick fascination looking into the minds of these people who just could do something so callous and they just want to continue with their day-to-day life. But you also start to realize that maybe these things, like maybe they're not as morally innocent as they seem, because they start out with, oh, it's to protect ourselves that we murdered this person, and you start to think, like, it story starts to unravel and you think, why have they really done this? And it's just, the vibes are so good, the writing's so well written. I think you just believe these characters are real, you believe in this world. I feel like the teacher, I've had this teacher before in my life, so it's just one of those books where you're like, yeah, I can fully engage in this, and I feel like this is something that could happen somewhere, because it's so gross, and yeah, these people are real, and it's just such a good book. I really enjoyed it anyway. So the book is, if you haven't guessed it already, The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and that is my second 5-star read. The next book I'm going to be quick about, because I feel like this cover is so simple that it didn't take me very long to draw. But this is my first non-fiction of the year that I gave 5 stars, and it is about a teacher who goes to North Korea to teach the sons of the elite of North Korea, and how she is given control over this class of boys, but also cannot obviously speak to them about the outside world, how they're living under this regime. And it's a really interesting insight into their world, because these are the top elite sons, of this country. They're being taught supposedly at the best school. This is the best school in North Korea, and she is coming over as an English teacher to teach them. And it's really interesting how we can see these kids believe what they're being told, and how they really kind of want to know about the outside world. And it's interesting because she talks about how she wants to show them Harry Potter, and that they can't be shown Harry Potter, but they also know about Harry Potter, and it's very interesting, like how would they know about that and things like that. It's deeply saddening and frustrating and all the things that you can imagine, but it's so interesting, and I think it's well worth 5 stars, and you should definitely give it a go if you're interested in North Korea. So this book is Without You, There Is No Us, and it's a 5-star read. The next book you'll probably get straight away, because it's one of those very popular books that came out this year, and is a follow-on story from other books that were a trilogy that may or may not have films. So you're probably already going to guess it, so I'll just say the name is Sunrise on the Reaping. The final, I don't know if it's the final book, but it's the 5th book of the Hunger Games, and it's about Haymitch's games. If you've never read the Hunger Games, basically we have our main character Katniss, and she is given this mentor of Haymitch, who is a previous winner of the Hunger Games. And this is basically his story and how he won his Hunger Games. So the story starts out with him being very happy, living, well, not very happy, because obviously they're under a horrible regime, but he's happy enough. He's a kid, he's living with his family, he's doing what he can to survive. And he's in love as well, there's that. But he gets reaped, obviously. We know this because we know he wins the games. We also know in the original trilogy, he's grown up and he is a very deeply depressed alcoholic. So we can take that information and apply it here, because we probably know what's going to happen within these pages to make this man become a depressed alcoholic, okay? So we still read it, even though we know it's not going to be a happy story. It was so horrible, though. I felt like the author She was like, you guys haven't been punished enough. You need to understand these books. You need to understand that this is not a great place to be. This is a horrible regime, and this is how easily it could happen to society. And it was, yeah, had a lot of grief. When I finished this book, I had a book hangover, that's for sure. I think I was in a deep state of depression for like a week of like thinking about these characters. And so I would not recommend this book, but I would very much recommend this book. It was a page turner, it was brilliant, characters super believable, fleshed out. I think I realized that I love really heavily character driven books, so this one, yep, 10 out of 10 for the characters. I think every book that I've mentioned here, bar obviously the non-fiction ones, are all really heavily character based, and I think I realized that's something that I enjoy. Anyway, this is Sunrise on the Reaping, and it is a 5-star and a 5 tiers, so just be careful if you pick this one up. The next book is another 5-star read, and I found it really interesting because it was more perspectives on the world that I wouldn't necessarily know about. I really find it interesting to read stories about other cultures. So this is a story about Chinese American daughters and their immigrant mothers, and they weave these stories together through the means of these families. The mothers come together to play mahjong, which is like a tile game. You probably know what it is. And so these 4 mothers are brought together through this, and it's sort of like a short story for each of the mothers and a short story for each of the daughters and their perspective of how the mothers moved from China to America and how these daughters are figuring their lives out, and sort of like that inherited trauma, but also like living in America and how they can find their cultural self, who they are as people. And it's really interesting that they speak on their relationships with their mothers and how mothers are so strong for coming through these things that they have been through. And it's just so beautifully written, and just a story of grief and trauma and bonding and womanhood. It's very, very impressive, and yeah, that's why this book, The Joy Luck Club, is 5-star read for me. Okay, the final book that I have drawn here is a epic fantasy. It is the second book of a 6-book, I think 6-book, I don't even know what you call that, sixology. They're all like 1,000 pages long, but I really enjoyed the first 2 books. So this is the second book. I guess you could put the first and the second together. If you were to read these books, that would be 2,000 pages. So they are hefty, they are long, they do drone on a little bit. And I'm feeling that I'm going to have a little complaint now about the rest of the books, because as this book ended so well, and I was really wondering, like, where is it going to go from here? I feel like if he had ended these books here, for me, I would be like, this is amazing. It could have been 4 books, and it could have ended here, and it would have been superb. Then I started to read the next one, and it just kind of, I don't know, for me, it just kind of goes all over the place. I'm not really explaining it very well, but okay. The first book is about a few different characters, and one of them is called Kaladin, and he starts out as a knight, and then he's betrayed and he becomes a slave, and it's sort of about his story of getting revenge. And then there's Shalan, who is just this artist who wants to go and learn to become a scholar, and we follow their stories and they intertwine, and then they realize they have powers, and it's just this sort of like they're at the bottom and they come up, and I just think it's so good, and I really enjoyed them. I don't really like reading high fantasy because I think it is a long slog. So this is a 5-star read despite that. And now I'm going to complain about the other ones because I just feel like he's just ambling on, and there's so, I mean, you know, each to their own. Some people might like this, that is just random details, and I feel like the characters are sort of losing themselves a little bit. As the author writes them, I feel like they're just not themselves anymore, and they're just getting lost in this long-winded story that's being milked out a little bit, and there's random little side stories that are just like, I'm not bothered, just get to the main story. But I've got to finish these stories. I've got to finish all 6 books because I need to know what happens in the end, even though I'm lagging. But I would say if you like high fantasy, then definitely give these stories a go. The first 2, 5-star. Actually, the first book I would give 4 stars, and this one I give 5 stars because it's a satisfying ending. But then as it continues, I'm not sure. Anyway, this book is Word of Radiance, and it is part of the Stormlight Archive, which apparently he's writing more of, which I don't get it, but okay, each to their own. Sorry to end it on such a bitter note, but those are my 6 5-star reads so far. I do have more, and I also could do a little video on books that I've hated. I would think that would be quite funny as well, although I don't like to be too negative. But let me know if you enjoyed this video and my summaries. Let me know if you've read any of these books. I would love to discuss them in the comments. I know that everybody has so wildly different opinions when it comes on books, because I think it is all subjective. I think it's like art, you either love it or hate it, or you're sort of mad about it. It's just how it is. So let me know if you loved or hated these books. I would really actually like to know, and I love discussing books and things, so yeah. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will, I'll post more of these. Let me know if you want more. And see you guys next time. All right, bye.